The Neighbors by Hannah Mary McKinnon begins with a car in flames. A tense scene between Abby and Tom before Abby passes out. Years later, our protagonist Abby seems to have it all. A great husband, Nate, a brilliant daughter, Sarah, a magnificent house in a nice neighborhood. She seems put together, disciplined. She doesn't drink, doesn't eat sweets, she works out excessively. She has everything anyone would want. But she also has secrets. Her family's perfect life is interrupted when a new family moves next door. Nate goes over to meet the new neighbors, and when Liam, the neighbor, hears Abby's name, he acts odd but claims he doesn't know her. When Liam and Abby meet, however, we know that's not true. They go way back. The story goes back and forth, and each chapter begins with a then and now description. It is told from various points of view, so we, the reader, know more than the characters at all times. Everything began in 1992 when Abby and Liam were dating and were planning to move in together. Her brother Tom was very close to the couple. One night, after Tom is dumped by his girlfriend, he and Abby go out for drinks. And the next thing Abby remembers is she's in the hospital. She finds out there was a car crash, Tom is dead, and her mother hates her. Although she remembers nothing from the incident, there were no witnesses to see what had happened, so all evidence points to her being responsible. She thought she was drinking and driving. Terrible thing to do, by the way. Don't drink and drive. It's a mistake she couldn't forgive herself, so she pushes Liam away, the man she loves most, knowing that he would eventually hate her for what she had done. She thought he would eventually see she was a monster. Later on, we found out that Nate happened to be passing by that night when he saw the car in flames. He tried to save Tom, who was unconscious and burning, and then he saw Abby. She was unconscious outside of the car. She could be saved kind of like easily, I suppose. He saved her, took care of her, visited her in the hospital, and then helped her get back on her feet. One thing led to another, and eventually they got married. Although Abby wasn't sure if she was in love with Nate, she knew she didn't deserve to be happy, and Nate had done so much for her. He even supported her and encouraged her to go to college and become an accountant, so she wouldn't have to work in a bar. Now, 20 years later, Abby's disciplining herself, punishing herself, restraining from everything she finds pleasure in, while Nate lives with a sense of guilt for not being able to save Tom, her brother. And it's this guilt, this regret binds them together. They understand each other, although I'm not sure that's a reason to be married to someone. I wouldn't know. As Liam moves next door with his own family, he brings back memories Abby has been trying to bury for so long. Abby and Liam, in a complicit agreement, pretend they had never met before, though they cannot resist each other. They begin an affair and plan to leave their spouses, trying to find the best way they could as to not cause any trouble to their teenage children. As the story progresses, we learn that Liam and Abby had met randomly once before, when Liam had a baby boy and Abby and Nate were trying to have a baby of their own. And thus, a question arises, whether Abby's daughter, Sarah, is Liam's. Abby assures him she was already pregnant when they had met that night and made love to each other, and they never discuss it again. Liam's son, Zach, and Sarah begin a secret relationship of their own, but since Abby's freaking out about keeping the two teenagers apart, Sarah makes up a phony boyfriend, Brian, whom she mentions in her diary to deceive her mother. She knows her mother is secretly reading her diary, and it works. This is a terrible thing to do as a parent, or anyone for that matter. As a person who's been keeping a diary since I was 8, I know could never forgive someone for reading it without my permission. And the thing is, I would never give my permission. The reason I write is to connect with myself, get my thoughts straight, and say things I could never say out loud. It's a very personal process of understanding who I am, evaluating my deeds, and figuring out the world. A diary is so much more than journaling and nothing close to jotting down secrets you wouldn't want other people to know. A fun part of Sarah's diary keeping was the word of the day part, where she wrote down a new word she learned, the definition of it, and a sentence using that word. Nancy, Liam's wife, finds an old picture of some friends from 1998, where at the background in the bar sat Liam and Abby. She thinks there's something going on since then and starts a conversation about what happened to those friends. During a dinner with the neighbors, Nate recognizes a name, the woman who used to work with Abby before they moved, and did some digging on Facebook until he found that picture. He's furious and he decides to go home to speak to Abby and get things straight. Meanwhile, his boss calls Abby and tells her he is furious and heading home. So she calls Liam, who comes over and is prepared to tell their spouses the truth. On the other hand, though, Abby is not willing to break Nate's heart by telling him she was with Liam 17 years ago. And that's when she confesses that she's not sure who Sarah's father is. Sarah is just outside the room and is listening to everything. She's disgusted at the thought that her mother could do something like that to her father, and also that her boyfriend Zach might also be her brother. Gross. She runs to the streets. Abby chases her, pushes her out of the way, and gets hit. At the hospital, we found out she's already passed on. Sarah has regrets and blames herself for everything. And at the same time, she lies about the paternity results to her father. It's like we've got a new little Abby in the making. In the end, Liam confesses to Nate that he was the one driving the night Tom died. Tom and Abby were both wasted and he fell upon them and offered to drive. As a deer appeared out of nowhere, he swerved and caused the accident. When he came to, he thought both Tom and Abby were dead. He was scared of losing his license, scared of losing his job, scared of going to jail, so he abandoned them and left them to burn, if not for Nate. He says he's loved her ever since he first saw her. But how does letting her live with guilt and shame and believing that she's a terrible person, how does it justify his love? I don't think it does. Liam was irresponsible and toxic and let Abby punish herself for something she hadn't done. And on the other hand, Nate was with a person who never truly loved him the way he deserved to be loved. And now Zach and Sarah found out they were so compatible and they were so in love with each other. And now they had to break up because they were siblings. And on top of that, Sarah had decided to be a better liar than her mother and never revealed that Zach was her brother all along. So at this point, no one knows. What I loved about this book was that the characters were brutally honest. Whether you agree with their actions or not, the author succeeds in letting you inside their minds. And each of the characters gets to tell their side of the story. And that gave the story an intimate, more personal feel. We need more books like this. I like the fact that all characters were morally gray, just as real humans are. Even the most righteous of us have a dark side that other people might deem as immoral. This book left a hollow feeling as I finished it. I was in the bus on my way home listening to the last chapter, and it kind of left a void in me. I really felt for Abby. She's the kind of person who beats herself up for the death of her brother after so many years and punishes herself by disciplining She restricts herself to a joyless life because she can't forgive herself. I am the one to stay up all night and toss and turn over something I might have said 10 years ago, and feeling guilt over something the rest of the world has possibly forgotten. So I can't imagine living with this burden. I mean, Abby could have killed herself for this guilt. I mean, that's a very dark turn. I mean, and on the other side, we have Liam, who obviously has no shame at all. These are two very conflicting traits in people who have, like, fallen in love with each other over and over again for so many years, for decades. Liam is the epitome of toxic in this book, and it's sad to see Sarah become her parents at the end of the book. So this leaves us with a question. Is lying to Nate to protect him moral? Is it immoral? Does it fit in the gray area, or is it amoral? I haven't decided yet. I don't know. What do you think?